Hi YouTube, and welcome back to our channel. Now on today's story, we're going to talk about another true crime case, and it is quite interesting. It has been unsolved for over a decade now, and there have been some recent developments, nothing significant that has been released to the public anyways, but definitely some movement in the case, which is very exciting. Before we get into today's case, I just want to insert a little bit of a disclaimer that we mean absolutely no disrespect when we talk about these cases. We're really just trying to bring some focus and attention to these cases that definitely need them, in hopes that it could provide some sort of information or, lead to an eventual closure for the friends and family of the victim. Now, I just want to send a quick reminder to please consider subscribing if you enjoy this type of content. We like talking about stuff like true crime, the paranormal, unsolved mysteries, and we also post 2 to 3 times a week. So if that's something that you're interested in, then please subscribe and hit the like button. Now, this case is actually one of Canada's biggest unsolved mysteries, and it took place in Victoria, which is actually located on Vancouver Island off the coast of Vancouver, British Columbia. Now, the victim of today's story is Lindsay Buziak, and her friends and family really described her as being someone that was just full of love, full of joy, life. She loved the people around her. She was a very caring person, and the fact that her life was taken when she was only 24 years old really did her a great injustice. She had so much more to give. She would have really blossomed into a beautiful woman had she been given the chance. So like I mentioned earlier, Lindsay was living in Victoria, British Columbia, and she was actually a real estate agent. She was only 24, so she was starting out her career in a field that was really interesting to her, and her family was actually also in the field, and her boyfriend was also an agent. I believe he was also a broker, and so was his family. So she was in the middle of a real estate driven family from the very beginning. It was almost unnatural for her not to go in that direction. And sadly, on February 2nd, 2008, she was actually on a showing, and this she didn't know, but unfortunately this would be the very last time that anyone would see her alive, and it would be the last time that she would be able to do a showing. So obviously, to understand what happened, we have to go back a little bit. So the story really starts in January of 2008. It was the brand new year. Lindsay was ready to really take control of her career and skyrocket. And what seemed like a promising lead actually turned out to be something quite fatal to Lindsay. So towards the end of January, she actually received a phone call from a woman that said she was looking for a new home in Victoria and that they actually had a $1 million budget. She said that the home was for her and her husband because he was being transferred for work from Vancouver to Victoria. So they really needed something that was turnkey. And one of the things that they mentioned to Lindsay when they called her was that the homes that they were going to go view had to be brand new, which is not unusual. But she also made an adamant request that the homes they go see be completely vacant, which is a little bit weird. And this actually did creep Lindsay out a little bit. Another thing to note about this strange caller is that they actually had a foreign accent. Now, Lindsay was actually reported telling several people about this phone call, and when it came to the accent, she said she couldn't quite pinpoint it. Initially, she thought that it could have been a Spanish accent, but she wasn't quite sure. It could have been Portuguese, it could have been Brazilian, it could have been Latin American. Regardless, it was a strange accent that almost sounded like the person on the other line was actually faking it, which only added to Lindsay's suspicion. So while she was on the phone with this lady, in the back of her mind, she's already wondering, like, there's something strange about this person. So she decides to ask her how she heard about her, considering that this woman had actually called Lindsay directly on her cell phone. Now, being young and still being new to the industry, Lindsay wasn't quite used to giving out her personal contact info to just anyone. The only people that would really have her contact info like this would be former clients of hers, friends, and family. So not knowing who was calling her, she decided to ask this woman, "How did you get my phone number?" And this woman actually told her that she had been referred to her by a former client of hers. So taking this info later on, after she finished this conversation, Lindsay actually did some digging and went calling several different clients that she had worked for that she thought could have possibly referred this woman to her. And everyone she spoke to said that it wasn't them. So right away, Lindsay knew that there was something even more suspicious going on here. Everyone she asked really had no idea what she was talking about. Her suspicions just kept growing and growing and growing. It was even reported on the day of the showing when Lindsay went to her office agency to get some paperwork and to just tidy up a few loose ends. She was actually talking to the receptionist there that day, and the receptionist actually gave an interview where she said that Lindsay was super freaked out about this visit. She was telling her that she was quite nervous, that she had a really bad feeling about it. She also had her boyfriend, like I mentioned earlier, and his name was Jason, and he was also in the real estate industry. So keeping that in mind, she decides to tell him about the strange phone call and her concerns as well. So he suggests that she should really consider taking the list, because given that the budget was $1 million, that would be a pretty good commission for any agent, especially someone so young like Lindsay that was just starting out. This would be a really, really good boost for her in her career. So he's making the case that she should definitely take it, and to make her just feel a little bit more comfortable, he suggests that he would go with her to this visit, to this viewing. He said he would wait for her to make sure nothing was going wrong, and keeping this in mind, she took the listing. With this in mind, Lindsay starts looking for houses that would be a really good fit for this couple, and she was able to send her several listings, and one of the listings was actually scheduled for a viewing on February 2nd, 2008 at 5:30 p.m. at a street called De Sousa Place. Now, this was a cul-de-sac, and if you don't know what a cul-de-sac is, it's basically like a circle neighborhood that's more secluded from the main street, and it actually provides a more safe environment for the home to be on. It's very, I guess you could call it prime real estate. A lot of families would prefer to be on a cul-de-sac just because if you have kids, it's a lot safer for them to be playing on the driveway or outside in the front lawn, because you don't have to really worry about them getting hit by a car. Now, it's also important to know, and I'll also put an image here or some sort of map to give you guys a better visual, but De Sousa Place is actually adjacent to another street called Torquay Drive, and this will play a role later on in the story. So on February 2nd, Lindsay and her boyfriend actually went to lunch together, and there were several witnesses that placed them at a restaurant. And this was at approximately 4:24 p.m. Now, at this point, after they finished eating, paying the bill, they both went their separate ways. Lindsay decided that she wanted to go home and do a quick outfit change before her visit at 5:30, and Jason said he actually had some paperwork to run and that he would meet her at the house. Now, Jason was actually caught on tape at exactly 5:30 p.m. running a few errands, and he was actually also seen with a friend of his. At approximately 5:38 p.m., he said he actually texted Lindsay telling her that he was just a couple minutes away and that he was sorry for being late. Now, Lindsay was on time. She actually got to the house right before 5:30, and the lockbox registered her opening the box at 5:29 p.m., which is completely normal for her showing. And when she got there, the woman had actually shown up with her husband, even though she had told Lindsay she would be showing up alone. Now, there's a few things to note about the couple that showed up. There were several witnesses in the area that day that actually gave a description, and these are pretty much the only clues that we know about these people and what happened that day. So the man was said to be approximately 6 feet tall with dark brown hair, maybe black hair, and he was Caucasian. Now, the woman was actually seen walking up the driveway up from the cul-de-sac. It's important to note that people said that they did not see their car. They didn't seem to arrive in a car, or if they did arrive in a car, it seems like they likely parked on Torquay Drive. Now, this woman was described as being fairly short. She also had very blonde hair. She was Caucasian, and that she was wearing a bright patterned dress. Her dress, I'll put a picture here, was actually a pink, white, and black dress. Very unusual, something that you don't see every day, and police officers actually think that this was a diversion tactic by this lady so people would remember more her dress versus what she actually looked like. So witnesses said they saw Lindsay greet the couple at the door, and judging by her body language, it really did seem like Lindsay did not know these people. She shook their hands, said hello to them, was very polite, and led them inside. So it seems that Lindsay had absolutely no idea who either of these people were. At approximately 5:40 p.m., Jason arrives to the house. Now, initially, he drove up towards the front of the house and had parked his car there. And that's when he saw the shadow of a man actually standing right inside the front door. The door had like a glass area where you can sort of see inside. So he was able to see the shadow of this man just standing there. So in his mind, he thought that the showing was running a little bit late and that they had actually just gotten there. So he decided to wait in his car. About 10 minutes later, he actually decides to go park the car on Torquay Drive. Now, when asked about why he did this, he actually said that he didn't want to seem like a nosy boyfriend. He didn't want to interfere with Lindsay's showing. This was a pretty big deal for her, so he didn't want to seem like he was meddling in her business. So he goes over to Torquay Drive and parks there for another 10 minutes. Now it's during this time that he sends Lindsay another text and asks her if she's okay. Now there's some discrepancy here as to which was the last text Lindsay responded to. There seems to be some miscommunication, or news reports are confused. Some people say that the last text Lindsay responded to was at 5:38, and then there's other text messages that say that the last one she responded to was the one after, when Jason was already there. So Jason says that Lindsay didn't respond to the last text he sent when he was asking if she was okay or not. So he waits approximately 20 minutes, and after no response, he decides to go to the door and knock. So he gets there and he's knocking at the door, and he's also still with his friend at this point. They're both going towards the house to see what's going on. So he knocks at the front door while his friend goes towards the back side of the house. Now they're knocking and no one's coming to the door. He tries to peep inside the window, see if he can see anything, but all he hears is just silence, really. And all he can see is Lindsay's shoes at the front door, which is normal. You would normally take off your shoes if you're going through a new house. And then when he tries to get in, he realizes that the door is actually locked, which kind of freaked him out a little bit. His friend that had actually gone to the backside of the house starts calling out to Jason and says that he sees an opening in the backyard fence. So Jason runs to the back and he sees with his friend that the actual patio door from the house leading to the yard is also open. So this is when things start to like freak them out a little bit. They're starting to wonder what's going on. This is unusual. So Jason gives his friend a boost over the fence. His friend runs into the house, unlocks the front door, and lets Jason in. Now, it's also important to note that Jason had called 911 when he was at the front door. He was starting to get worried, and on the phone call, he had actually told the operator that he was freaking out about his girlfriend, that she wasn't answering the door, and then this phone call actually got cut short when his friend called him over. The last thing Jason said to them was that he and his friend were going inside the house now, and then he hangs up. What he didn't know is that the operator had actually sent the ambulances and the police over when he made that original first call. So when Jason gets let in through the front door after his friend unlocks it, immediately he starts yelling out Lindsay's name. He starts looking for her, and he says that the first thing he did was really just run up the stairs. Since the stairs were directly in front of the front entrance, that was the first place he hit. And he runs into the master bedroom, and unfortunately that is where he finds Lindsay in a pool of her own blood. He then calls 911 again at 6:11 p.m. and it actually didn't take police and the ambulance to get there. It didn't take them very long to get there, actually. They arrived within minutes, but by the time they got there, they determined that Lindsay was already dead. It was initially determined that she was stabbed to death, and now there are multiple, and I mean multiple, reports of how many times Lindsay was stabbed. Some people say she was stabbed about a dozen times, and then there's other media reports saying that she was stabbed well over 40 times. Now, when you think about this, and if you're a true crime junkie, you know if someone is stabbing you 40 times, it's very, very personal, and it's usually done out of anger or some sort of revenge. So this automatically led investigators to believe that this was a personal attack on Lindsay, and it was very likely done by someone that she knew. While they looked at her body, they were also able to determine that she didn't have any self-defense wounds on her, so it's very likely that she was actually attacked from behind when she wasn't suspecting it, and then by the time she had turned around, it was too late, and then they'd kind of just started stabbing her in the chest about 40 times. Now, investigators were also able to rule out that this was a robbery because Lindsay actually still had all of her valuables on her. It was basically like a hit and run. They did what they were there to do, and then they left. Now, when investigators started searching the house for further evidence, they were not able to find anything. It was a very, very clean scene aside from the actual crime scene where Lindsay was found. They didn't find fingerprints, they didn't find footprints, they didn't find DNA. It seemed too good to be true. It almost seemed like these were professionals carrying out a task. After going through all of this, it was determined that Lindsay died sometime between 5:38 p.m. and 5:41 p.m. So immediately when a woman is killed, under any circumstances, usually the first person police look at are her partner, her boyfriend, her husband, her fiance. That's usually the first person on the police suspect list. So Jason was brought into the office with his friend, but they were actually quickly ruled out because of the surveillance tape that he was caught on at 5:30 p.m. He was also quite cooperative with the police. He answered all their questions. He even took them back to the house to reenact a scene when he was entering the home for the first time looking for Lindsay. And he did agree to do a polygraph test, which is said that he actually did pass very, very well. With that in mind, he was actually cleared as a suspect rather quickly from this investigation. So this left investigators scratching their heads. Who could have done this to Lindsay? But more importantly, why? Who did Lindsay know? Did Lindsay do something? Did she piss someone off? It seemed very, very unusual and unlikely because the way that her friends and family described her, it seemed like she was just a happy person, that she wasn't involved in the wrong circles. So it was a very, very big question for everyone. Why would someone do this to her? Now, when Jason was giving his statement and he told police officers that he had seen the shadow of the man inside the front door, this is when police were able to pinpoint together that this was likely the man and the woman attempting to leave the house after committing the crime. Now they were caught off guard when Jason arrived because they weren't expecting anyone to come to the house. So in a quick change of plans, they actually decided to lock the front door and sneak out through the back, which is where they made the hole in the back fence, and then escape towards Torquay Drive, where it's suspected that their getaway car was parked. This is very likely why no one was able to see a car drive up to the house when the woman first arrived. This is probably why she was seen walking up instead of driving up. Now, police were actually able to track the phone that actually called Lindsay's cell phone. They were able to track about 10 phone calls that were made to Lindsay, and it's very suspicious because this phone was only used to call Lindsay. There were no other calls made to the phone, and no other calls were made to the phone. It was actually purchased in Vancouver a couple months before the murder, and it was activated under the name Paulo Rodriguez. Now, police seem to think that this is a fake name because it turned out to be a complete dead end. Now, another thing about this cell phone is that after the crime, it was actually never used again. So this kind of pushes authorities to believe more so that it was a hit, it was a strategized operation, and that the intended victim that day was Lindsay, and it was definitely pre-planned. Upon further investigation, they were able to register or locate the registration of the cell phone to a business in Vancouver, but unfortunately that also turned out to be a dead end. They think they just kind of picked a random address. so they could activate the phone, and that's basically where that ends. Now, the biggest clue that leads people to believe that this was an organized hit is that the cell phone was actually turned on before the day of Lindsay's death, and it was caught pinging on the cell phone towers as it traveled by ferry from Vancouver to Victoria. So after hearing all this, I know there's a lot of you that are probably saying there are way too many more questions that are being left unanswered. There's not a lot of information to go on here, and that's how I felt too when I was reading this. A lot of it didn't make sense. There were a lot of unanswered questions. This could go in many different directions, and if it actually did go in the direction that it was an organized hit, obviously the burning question is why? Why would anyone want to do this to such a young girl? It's speculated that police actually know a lot more information than they're releasing to the public. It's not unusual for police to do this just to preserve the integrity of the investigation, but that hasn't stopped people from coming up with multiple theories as to what could have happened that day. Now, the first theory is that Jason had something to do with it. Now, I know he said he was cleared, and he was. I just want to make that clear that police did clear him as a suspect, but people seem to believe that he was involved somehow. Now, this comes from the fact that Lindsay actually traveled to Calgary approximately 6 weeks before her death. Now, she went to Calgary to go visit her father, and she had gone alone on this trip. Now, her father said that she had actually told him how unhappy she was with her relationship with Jason at the time, and that she knew that he was absolutely crazy about her, that he loved her, he adored her, but that the relationship just wasn't working out because he seemed to be a little bit too controlling, a little bit too possessive, qualities that she didn't really like in her boyfriend. So she was seriously contemplating breaking up with him. Now, the second theory is that Jason's mother, whose name is Shirley, actually had something to do with this. Now, I just want to make this clear again. This is all alleged. None of this has been proven. These are all just theories that I was able to find online. So Jason was actually seen and talked about as being a huge mommy's boy, and his mother returned love. She loved him and he loved her. He was very, very spoiled. And this proved to be right when Jason's mother actually decided to buy him and Lindsay a beautiful, beautiful waterfront home as a gift. She was happy that her son was happy. And just as a gift from her generous heart, she decided to buy them this huge mansion that was fully renovated for them to enjoy. Now, shortly after, Lindsay actually broke up with Jason, and it's not really known why. I think Jason actually denies that they broke up, but it's reported that Lindsay actually did break up with him for a period of time, and they did end up getting back together. This time when they got back together, Lindsay's mom actually bought them a brand new condo. Now, this is a little bit strange. I don't know how many of you have had a potential mother-in-law buy you two homes, two luxury homes to say the least. It's also important to note that Shirley actually worked at the same brokerage that Lindsay worked at. She was actually a branch manager there. And this plays a key role later on, which we will go into. And on the day before Lindsay died, Shirley actually said that her and Lindsay went on a walk together. And this was during lunchtime, and Lindsay actually opened up to her quite a bit about the struggle in her relationship with Jason, and she started talking about her ex-boyfriend, surprisingly. And to Shirley, it seemed like Lindsay was expressing interest in returning to her ex-boyfriend. This is putting Shirley in a very awkward position, and it's easy to see how a lot of resentment could be built after she's bought them two beautiful homes, and all she's talking about is actually going back to her ex-boyfriend. So seeing all this happen to her baby boy, the question is this enough to push Shirley to want Lindsay dead, or at least out of Jason's life? My answer would probably be no. I don't think that she would go this far to remove her from her son's life. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I find this to be a very extreme solution to a temporary problem. Now, the third theory is very, very crazy. I thought this was kind of unbelievable and a huge coincidence. It almost seems like this is something that you only see in movies. Now, on the trip that Lindsay actually took to Calgary to see her father, she had actually taken the opportunity to reach out to a former friend of hers that she had gone to high school with. Now, she tried to reach out to him through Facebook and again through cell phone, but it's not known as to whether or not she actually successfully made contact with this person. But it's strange because this person actually lived in Victoria, the same town that she lived in. So why would she wait till she was in Calgary to contact this person? Now, the same time that she was in Calgary, she didn't know this, but police were actually investigating a very deep and large drug operation called High Noon. And in January 2008, they actually seized approximately $2 million worth of cash and substances that were obviously illegal, and that whoever was in charge of this entire operation actually lost quite a bit of money. And the way police were actually able to create this whole operation was through informants. And what Lindsay didn't know is that in the roundup of arrests that were made during this operation, her friend was actually one of the people that was arrested. Now, people are thinking that maybe Lindsay was mistaken as an informant, having reached out to a friend of hers that was involved in this entire organization. Is it possible that people were using her as an example, that they had mistaken her for someone that had spoken to the police? It's very interesting. There's a lot of people that are very hot and cold about this theory. Some people say that it's absolutely impossible for this to be the case, because the phone calls Lindsay started getting were before the drug operation had been busted. So it wouldn't make much sense with the timeline. And then there are other people that are saying that yes, it's very likely these people don't really care who you are. If you talk to the police, or if they even think that you talk to the police, they don't care. They will use you as an example to scare everyone else into basically acting right. As of today, there's been little information revealed. I saw a recent article from a couple months back that the FBI is now involved, which is very interesting. The FBI doesn't usually get involved unless it's a very serious matter. Considering this was a Canadian case, the FBI is an American agency, so that's definitely something to keep in mind. I did see that there was new DNA testing technology available, and that they were considering doing some new tests involved. But other than that, that is all the information we have on Lindsay's death. To be honest, I don't know where I stand on this. I think this is a very interesting, intriguing case. A lot of unanswered questions for sure. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you think it was Jason? Do you think Jason organized this through alternative parties? Do you think it was his mother? Do you think it was part of the cartel bust? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I would love to read your opinions. If you guys have other cases that you guys want me to cover, let me know those as well. I will also leave several links in the description box that relate back to tips where you can provide some help to Lindsay's family. I'm sure they would definitely appreciate any information that you may have. So that does it for today's video. Thank you for joining me, guys, and I will see you in the next one.